was walking through the desert, and the sun was beginning to set, and in the desert at night, it gets cold. And I was looking for my peyotes, and I was beginning to despair because I hadn't found any, and I kept, how many peyotes am I supposed to pick? And they kept giving me these, I kept asking questions like, how many peyotes am I supposed to pick? And I kept getting these like cryptic shamanic medicine person type responses such as, the peyote will pick you. You will know, the peyote will speak to you. And I was like, I don't know, I don't see any peyotes. What am I supposed to do? So I began praying, and of course, that advice was perfect. And I eventually found 3 peyotes, and I cut them with my little pocket knife and brought them back to the campground with me. And all I had was a little water bottle because we were in the middle of the desert. So I attempted to clean it off, but I don't know if you guys have ever eaten 3 raw peyotes covered in dirt before. It was definitely an important part of the experience. I ingested quite a bit of desert that night. And the desert was an important part of my experience. It was a beautiful, healing place to be under the stars that night with the fire billowing smoke at me as if it knew I needed a smoke clearing. And so with many psychedelics, first comes a bit of physical discomfort where you feel kind of sick, kind of nauseous, and then I began trembling violently, and I didn't know why this was happening. Nobody else was trembling and shaking like this. Like, yes, peyote can be a bit physical. Now I understand. Earlier this year, after 5 years of mystery illness, I was diagnosed with autoimmune disease in my cerebellum. Your cerebellum is the part of your brain at the base of your spine that controls your motor movements, your ability to walk and talk. And this is actually quite serious. If I hadn't found out that I have autoimmune disease, I would have ended up in a wheelchair with dementia. It's a miracle that I'm standing here in front of you today giving this talk. And the way that I ended up with autoimmune disease in my cerebellum is that I truly abused that part of my brain. At 12 years old, anorexia landed me in the psychologist's office, and I was told that I had inherited the family crazy and I would need to be medicated for life. This was the 90s in the United States, when the theory was that mental illness was caused by a chemical imbalance in your brain and you needed antidepressants or benzos or mood stabilizers to fix you. Now we know that is a total lie. That theory was invented by a Prozac marketing executive, and it became the mainstream medical narrative. How messed up is that? But I didn't know that. I was 12 years old. So I listened to what my parents told me, what the doctors told me, and I believed I had been born profoundly broken, and I lived out that destiny. I was a truly crazy person. I had hyperventilating panic attacks. I had just chaos spirals, depression, anxiety. I had abusive relationships, abusive work relationships, abusive romantic relationships. I later became an alcoholic in my late 20s, early 30s. I smoked cigarettes. My system was so toxic. I was always on a cocktail of mental health drugs, and sleeping pills, birth control, all the stuff, right? Trying to drink away my problems. And after my second suicide attempt, I took 4 bottles of pills and was unconscious for 48 hours. It is a miracle that I am standing here on this stage talking to you today. I woke up and I was like, I can't believe I'm still alive. And this isn't working. These drugs aren't fixing me. I've been taking them for 2 decades and I just keep getting worse and worse. And there was this call from my soul. There has to be another way. And I began searching. It led me on a journey all over the world. Look at me, I'm standing here before you in Mexico City. I've been living in Mexico for 6 years now. And I began learning energy work practices, things like yoga, breath work, chanting mantras. Mantras have been an incredible, beautiful healing for me because it's an active form of meditation. It stimulates your vagus nerve and it helps calm your whole system. What I was learning as I collected and discovered and learned about these energy work modalities was how to calm my own self down. Because all of that time, my story, my old story, was that I was a crazy person who was a victim of her own mental health, that I had no control, that a panic attack could hit me anytime and take me out. But what I discovered by learning these incredible modalities is that I do have control over my mental state. I learned how to regulate my nervous system. I began training my brain. And by the time I got here to Mexico, I'm so lucky. The fate synchronicity brought me to Paola, and she was like, Amber, you've done a lot of work. You do not need to be taking these mental health drugs. And she told me the truth. The truth is that these drugs are consciousness reducing. They're disassociative. And I was losing part of my mental capacity. They were freezing my brain. I wasn't able to feel fully. She was like, if you want to continue on this path, in order to advance, you're going to have to get off of all of these substances. And I was like, I don't know. I had been on them for a long time, and I truly believed that I had to take these drugs. But after some pushing and prodding, I took the leap, and I detoxed off all of my mental health drugs, and it was gnarly. I did not know what I was doing. I did it far too fast, and I experienced extreme withdrawal. My bones hurt. I ended up in the hospital at one point. I lost my period for months on end, but I made it, right? Like about 6 months later, I started to feel okay. About 9 months later, I was better than I dreamed possible for someone like me. And somewhere between the many years on the drugs, the suicide attempts, the too fast withdrawal, I ended up with a traumatic brain injury, an autoimmune disease in my brain. I didn't know that the night when I was trembling in the desert on peyote. I thought it was because I was weak. 2 weeks prior, I'd had a miscarriage. I lost a baby. And that was quite an interesting experience. It was so intensely sad. Like, I thought I was this happy ever after story for a hot second. You know, Amber was on drugs for all these years. She got off, she met this man. They began chanting mantras together and doing kirtan events, and then she got pregnant and had a baby and la la la, right? No, after 3 months, I had this beautiful vision of doing a natural birth in my home, and I did. I was on the ground having contractions, but instead of delivering life, I delivered blood and death. And that night, under the stars with the peyote, I also have autoimmune disease in my ovaries, which it's not as clear how that happened, but probably a result of a lot of sexual trauma that happened during those afflicted years as well, right? My womb hurt so bad, and I relived that experience over and over and over again on my knees, delivering blood and death. And my friends were there, and they held me, and they sang mantras to me, and they cleared me with incense, and they let me scream and cry in their arms. And I also died, and I was born, and I gave birth to life over and over all night long. This crazy ride, this crazy journey that was so beautiful too, spirals and colors and patterns, just like the Huichol art that you see out there. It was quite the trip. And it lasts a long time. Peyote lasts like 12 hours. So sometime in the next day, I began to come to normal consciousness. My ego returned, and I knew that I have lived many lives, and that it is true. I have been born before. I have died before. I have given birth to life before. I have given birth to death before. And this is just a blip in the story, and it doesn't even matter that much. This is such a small moment in time. And I had this peace. The kind of peace that I don't know how I could have ever arrived there on my own without the help of peyote. And I just knew, like, we live in a dimension of life and death. No one comes to planet Earth and isn't touched by death and life, whether it's, you know, a houseplant dying and a flower blooming, or losing a loved one and having a newborn be born. And you have been born and you will die. And suddenly I knew that what had happened was the most natural, normal thing possible. And what the peyote had gifted me is what they call in shamanism recapitulación, re-chaptering. Because the way that we see our lives and tell our stories is incredibly powerful. The way I choose to view my story determines how I live. And instead of feeling like, oh my God, how sad, poor Amber, I was like, here I am, reborn into life. This is my story, this crazy story I have. I have been living and suffering in order to collect the medicine that I need in order to be here in front of you, offering it up to you today. And that's how I choose to see my story. Recapitulación, re-chaptering, is when you go back and you rewrite a chapter in your story. And it doesn't have to be with psychedelics. It can also be through shamanic journeying. But it's such a powerful practice, because if we change the way we think, we change the way we live. And I mean, that is transformation right there. So the ceremony is a beautiful, exciting part, right? But what makes this transformation is what you do with that ceremonial experience, all that information you received. And I brought that experience back to my life. The version of Amber I told you guys about at the beginning, I don't even know what she would have done. She would have drunk herself into a hole. She would have tried to commit suicide. She would have been a total mess. And I saw a new version of myself emerge. I sat with my pain. I let myself be in the void. I did a womb clearing. I sang mantras. I prayed to God. And months later, as the dust cleared, I had this knowing that I am indeed a truly transformed woman. Because it's easy to be a Zen yogini singing mantras when everything goes great. It's when the shit hits the fan that you find out what you're really made of. And I discovered I'm made of some pretty gritty, resilient stuff. And I said, okay, I now have the medicine I need to offer to others and be of service and help. And I opened my company, Mental Health Rebels. I didn't birth a baby, but now I do have a baby company, which is pretty special. And I talk about mental freedom. And what does that mean? So for me, I am a mental freedom evangelist and coach. And I do work with people to help them do the transition of coming off psych drugs, because that is definitely an experience that can shackle our mind, these drugs that control us from the inside. So that's part of it, getting to be free from drugs. But I think mental freedom is our birthright. It's getting to just be who you are without these shackles, these chains on our mind. And we have other ones too, like your trauma, your subconscious programming from your society, your culture, your parents, limiting beliefs. There's so many things that trap us. And when we can let go of those chains and drop them and step into our mental freedom, what does that feel like? What does that look like? For me, it is presence. It is getting to be here and experiencing the totality, the full range of my emotions in safety. And if that emotion is my heart broken, weeping on the floor, it's a range, right? If I can unlock the ability to sit with that difficult, dark, hard thing and find the exquisite beauty in it. I will tell you now, losing a baby was one of the most deep spiritual things I've ever experienced. If I can find the beauty in that, I unlock the other end of the spectrum too. And I am now able to find bliss and joy and experience ecstasy with ease, viewing a flower opening and blooming, right? And so that big range, being able to feel safely. Add onto that peace of mind. This story that I told you, it was all so perfect, but it wasn't human perfect. None of that was human perfect. As a human, I would have never planned any of that. I would not have been eating dirty peyote in the desert. Come on. That was divine perfect. I'm 41 years old, and up to now, I've endured and survived all the things that have happened to me. And the day that I don't and I die, that will also be perfect. So can we trust that the things that appear to be so terrible and so wrong and so difficult often are the biggest blessings that we as humans could have never, ever planned? And when I can arrive there and rest in the knowledge that everything is truly perfect, it is then that I am free. And so I ask you today, what story do you have? Do you need some rechaptering so that you too can free your mind? It is yours. It is your birthright. I will leave you with that today. Thank you. You can find me at Mental Health Rebels on social media and mentalhealthrebels.com. I have so many stories. I bet you do too. Find me and let us swap stories.